So James, you've left Los Angeles. Of course, there's a writer's strike, so it's a little easier to get away.
Out of work.
And but you're here pounding the streets for Senator Edwards. Why?
You know, it's a really interesting question, especially for a guy like me who's a card-carrying NRA member, redneck from Tennessee, because he is the most progressive of the Democratic candidates. But, you know, like so many people who I voted Republican a lot of my life, but I am independent. I started looking through all these candidates. I knew there were going to be so many, so wide open this year, and studying as much as I could about them. And what really appealed to me about John, without getting on too much of a soapbox, was his independence. He's a tough guy. He's a fighter. He's refused to take any lobbyist money, any PAC money, which should appeal to you guys, being very independent of monetary influences.
But there is some critique of him from some of the other camps that he's taken money from some of the hedge fund investors. Is that an issue? Do you know anything about it?
All I know about it is that he took that job when he got out of the Poverty Center to learn more about it. It wasn't about the hedge fund as much as an investment company. And from what I understand, when he found out that they technically were involved in some of the loans that have become problematic for homeowners, obviously, in America, that he not only created a plan to help repay it and make it back, but he also removed himself from it. You know, I talked to him about it. My understanding is that he wasn't aware of that part of the business, that it was sort of a consultation type role. But he also has gotten criticism for taking money from trial lawyers, and there's need for tort reform and all those things. So I know there are places that anybody can find argument, and I completely understand it. To me, there was a difference in taking money from a group of lawyers who were your peers. They're not a lobby, because you know lobbyists are paid to be lobbyists, and there is a definition, and by definition there's a difference. And there was a big difference in trial lawyers supporting him and the defense industry or the pharmaceutical industry or the healthcare industry. So for me, I found a difference there. Not everyone does.
What was the issues that you were most concerned about that brought you to him?
Universal health care. And you know, my dad was a dentist, a very poor dentist, oddly enough, in rural Tennessee, who hated the idea of socialized medicine. So I mean, I grew up on the other side of that. But we're in a place in our country where it's crippling the economy. People are going bankrupt. I have two very good friends who had health care coverage, both of which filed bankruptcy over one was called a pre-existing condition and one they just refused to treat. We're at a place where the system's not working. And as reluctant as I've been, I feel like it's time we have to make that change. And I think John Edwards, Edwards had the most clear plan, the earliest. Obama and Clinton both came out with one later, one of which is very similar.
Kucinich is proposing a more Canadian-style, single-payer, government-run health care plan. And I lived much of my time in Canada, and what John McCain says simply isn't true. Canadians, on the whole, are pretty happy with their health care system.
Really?
Very.
No.
In fact, there's been lots of polling. Would you like a better health care system or a tax cut? And people always pick a better health care system over tax cuts. Why hasn't Edwards gone for a more single-payer? Why does he still want to keep private insurance companies in the mix?
Well, he's pretty close to it. I think he's much closer, obviously, than the other two frontrunners ahead of him. Nobody can rival Kucinich's plan if that's what you're after. You know, I don't know enough about the technicalities of the business other than sort of the specifics of John's plan. And I agree with you. It's a tough issue because I've always heard that myth that, well, the Canadian system's a mess, so you don't want to do that either. But what we do certainly isn't working. I mean, for people to have to go to an emergency room and beg for coverage. And my friend, who was a very middle-income person, had a heart condition, was determined pre-existing, and her bills got up over $1 million, and they filed bankruptcy. And she had one of the major healthcare companies. She had coverage, you know. So I actually very much like Kucinich's plan. But I think John's is certainly is going far enough in that direction that it will be a huge help, and it guarantees insuring everyone. It's just in a different way.
And Dennis seems to be caught in this thing. Well, I agree with Dennis, but I'm voting for someone else. We hear that from everybody.
Yeah, it's true. I don't agree with Dennis on everything. He was not. I won't say that. I do like him very much. I also like Senator Obama very much. But I do think Kucinich has a lot of those people, and it's unfortunate, who don't vote for him because they think he's unelectable. Edwards happens to be, I thought, and still do believe, to be the most electable. He can win the states that the Democrats forfeited in 2004, just gave up. The Ohios, Tennessees, Michigans, Arizona, New Mexico, all those states that are there to be had that won't vote for Hillary or Obama. So that's part of electability is a big thing for me too, and it's not even a race and sex thing. That's really a non-starter. It's just an electability issue that I think John really has. But you know, it's a tough battle. They're $200 million candidates, and we're not one of them. So it's been a real battle.
What other solutions has he proposed that attract you?
He has this program called the New Energy Economy Fund, where it funds research for in pursuit of renewable energies, biofuels, particularly biodiesel, all this solar. He's the only candidate that doesn't support any more funding or any more pursuit of nuclear energy or coal-based. Of course, we're stuck with coal-based fuels, but no more pursuing different ways to do it. Go another direction. Both the other two Democratic frontrunners do. Obviously, Kucinich didn't. So in that respect, he's much more progressive than the two people ahead of him.
I find him rather ambiguous and sometimes trying to be a little hawkish to prove something on the foreign policy issues.
Edwards?
Yeah, Edwards.
Wow, I don't hear the hawkish part at all. In fact, the big complaints are that he wants to leave Iraq way too soon and that he's too soft. So obviously, so then you're going to hear both sides. I just did an interview where, about how John Edwards wants us to lose the war, and so do Obama and Hillary. And it's like, I doubt that's true.
On this issue of taking the nuclear option off the table on Iran,
right?
Edwards wouldn't, take it off the table. Biden did. I mean, Biden said it's ridiculous to have this kind of rhetoric, and Biden's a pretty experienced foreign policy guy. But Edwards stuck with Obama and Clinton with this sort of positioning, oh no, I won't take it off the table.
Well, I think those guys, are reluctant to ever take anything off the table. Because once you've done it, it's like read my lips, And so once you've taken it off the table, then you've made a promise. And so, but I understand your position, and I think it probably more than anything was a reluctance to make a promise about something that was that hypothetical. Although I do respect Biden for it, I'm a big fan of his too.
When you say you grew up with Republican roots, when did the trees start growing in a different direction here?
I think actually when I moved to Chicago, I was there for about 6 or 7 years, and then went to L.A. and all my friends gave me a hard time about getting all liberal when I went to L.A. But I think what happens, you get exposed to different sides of topics. You get exposed to different people. Different kinds of people. You start to understand the battle that gay and lesbian people fight in America, because there are a lot in the acting community, which I didn't run into in rural Tennessee, and so you become a little more sympathetic to that cause. We're lucky that we make really good money for what we do in LA, and you become a little more willing you're a little more charitable, I think, and willing to pay a little more tax to help other people out. Whereas not it's a little different battle than I was fighting in Tennessee. So I think it's all those things combined, and it's not an implication that people in the South are closed-minded. It's just a different experience for me, in a way to say, we're really making money now, and it's time, let's spread it around. And part of that for my wife and me was, maybe I'm wrong on let's don't pay any tax, and maybe it's time to take care of other people. And that, as much as anything, was sort of what brought me not even to the middle, but all the way to Edwards, which is almost with Kucinich, as far as, time for... Edwards keeps saying it's time for Americans to be patriotic about something besides war. And I think it's a great point. It's time that people realize, with a little bit of sacrifice, we can make a lot of changes, and that appealed to me too.